Well, hi everyone, Craig Dyer here, Training Director with Christianity Explored Ministries, and it's a real joy to welcome back Lindsay Ferguson and for the first time Tim Matthews. Some of you might remember Lindsay. She was on a chat with me earlier in the year, just in the early days of COVID, and Lindsay's one of the senior leadership team at Christ Church Liverpool, and Tim Matthews works full-time as the mobilisation director with EIM International, but also as a busy member of that busy evangelical church right in the middle of Liverpool. Has a lot to do with running the Christianity Explored and Discipleship Explored and Life Explored courses. So we thought it would be great just to catch up with them today and hear a little bit about how this crazy year has been for them, and particularly we're going to be talking about Life Explored for the benefit of our friends in Eastern Europe who are just beginning to put their toe in the water in relation to that resort. So great to have you, Lindsay and Tim. Thank you so much for making time to talk to me today. Lindsay, beginning with you, can you just give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch from the tail end of last year? What has the year been like at Christ Church Liverpool in terms of evangelistic strategy?
Well, certainly with regards to these programs, we were finishing off Christianity Explored at the beginning of the year, and then started on Discipleship Explored as a follow-on from Christianity Explored with interested people. So that was traveling along quite nicely when all this lockdown began. So we just basically switched to Zoom and carried on as normal. But we also recognised that this whole unprecedented pandemic, this big drama that had affected all of us, was sobering people to their need, the fragility perhaps of life, their own vulnerability, and there seemed to be a real opportunity that people were having in the limited workplaces where people were still going in, like the medical fraternity and so forth, to sort of be addressing questions about the gospel, questions about life. And people were vulnerable, people were scared. This was all new and out of their control. So we recognized that whilst there were so many things in church that we couldn't do, doing Discipleship Explored or Christianity Explored or Life Explored was eminently possible because of Zoom and the internet. So we really wanted to seize this day of opportunity when people were far more open than normal to asking the big questions in life. And so whilst our Discipleship Explored was trundling along on a Sunday evening as normal, we launched a Christianity Explored on a Monday night under a banner title that we gave it of Exploring Christianity. So it was far more worded for people to kind of explore something rather than have something on them. So we started up we had the two courses. We had Discipleship Explored on a Sunday, and we started up Christianity Explored on a Monday, and just made this a massive thrust from our church. It was the headline banner on the website. I'd seen that Alpha had done a similar thing, and so many requests. So it became front and center of our website to let people know there was an opportunity to explore Christianity. So we began.
That's so helpful to hear. I'd like to hear more in a minute about how you organize the teams and so on, but let me jump to Tim for a moment. So Lindsay used the phrase there, we switched to Zoom. So I can just imagine, somebody decides to do that, Tim, and it sounds like it landed on your plate to set that up, to organize that, to be in the front guard of that sort of thing. What was that experience like, Tim? Were you used to using Zoom? Had you some experience of it before? Was it an easy transition?
Yeah, fortunately I had some experience of Zoom and similar kind of system, so it wasn't quite the scary plunge into the unknown that it might otherwise have been, and that made a big difference. So being able to say to the guys on Discipleship Explored when lockdown hit us and we realised that we weren't going to meet for dinner and we weren't going to have that round table conversation anymore, actually gave us the confidence to say, well, okay, look, we can share a video through Zoom. We can use these breakout rooms if we need to, whatever they are, because I don't think any of us had used them at that point on Zoom. So we can actually have those conversations that work with a small group of people rather than 20 people on a call where you never really have a conversation that's easy.
Yes.
So we had a degree of confidence we could do this. So we didn't want to drop Discipleship Explored, neither did the folks that were doing it. So it was needs must, and we'll switch to Zoom. The appetite was there. Everybody wanted to complete the course. So let's switch on. Let's give it a go. So a little bit rabbit in headlights in some respects. How will this actually work? And a little bit clunky for the first few meetings in terms of switching things on and off and sharing in the right way and so on. But after a couple of weeks, that comes and it runs fairly smoothly. And
did you find, Tim, that there was a surprising relatability or relational warmth in the thing, even though you weren't in the same room? Did you find that it was still doable from that point of view?
Yeah, so we kind of had two experiences running at the same time, as Lindsay said. So we had Discipleship Explored, where that relationship between the members was already there. We'd been meeting physically for a little while. So that transitioned quite nicely onto Zoom. And there wasn't really I don't think anybody really suffered in any negative way with that transition. When we started Christianity Explored, it was a much bigger group. If everybody was there, and there were a few weeks when everybody's there, we had close to 30 people on the call. Now, a lot of those were church members and Christians who were bringing friends and team members, so that they weren't all guests, sadly, but they weren't. But nonetheless, what we found is by mixing the way the meeting ran between having us all together for some general aspects, so like watching the video, having a reading, but then regularly breaking into smaller rooms where you had somebody appointed to facilitate and lead that room, just as you would for a table in a physical meeting. And by keeping those rooms consistent throughout the weeks, those relationships grew quite quickly. So we had a real good sense of people feeling very free to actually open up and talk and answer the questions without that sense of, I don't like this environment, it's
amazing,
restrictive, and so on. It was quite remarkable. And I think, obviously people were praying for all that was going on. So it wasn't that we were sort of consummate professionals at running the technology and putting things together. God's Spirit was definitely at work, but it did transition very neatly. A little bit of practice, and then actually switching between sharing a video and breaking out into rooms, a little bit of organisation to make sure you know who's going to be in each room, and being able to get that organised smoothly, just made the evenings flow quite well.
Brilliant. And I love your emphasis there on us just not knowing how much the Holy Spirit was at work to make that happen, and
for sure,
and to make people feel at home. I mean, the whole thing is miraculous, but great to hear that. Now, Lindsay, we've been touching on the fact that you were running DE and CE at one point in parallel, and part of your role there is to oversee the recruitment of team. I mean, tell us a little bit about the church's overall annual normal strategy. Are you sort of chopping through CE, DE, or CELE, DE every year? And then if you say a word about how you recruit people to the teams, and I know a little bit about from what you said about the sort of twin track of evangelism and discipleship training that you're doing there. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think the overall ideal is to maybe run a few courses a year. We generally start our year in September because we've got a lot of students in city centre type shape. So running one before Christmas, and then one after Christmas, and then one pre-summer. But LE and DE, I think, are great, both as introductory courses. LE and CE, Christianity. Christianity Explored, like really clearly the gospel and what the Bible teaches us about Jesus. It's there. Life Explored is far more, linked to bringing our questions to the table, and then the Bible answers that. So I think those two can be used interchangeably as introductory courses, and are very complementary in that contrast. And then you can move from either of them to the other, or into Discipleship Explored. So that's a nice kind of movement, and we've enjoyed, for some people who finished Discipleship Explored, and perhaps moving into a Bible study afterwards, if they're not quite ready to go to church, but ideally it'd be good to be in churches. So that's kind of a pattern and a movement that's great. But we also want to really use them to disciple and train already existing Christians.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was looking at people for team, and Tim and I discussed this together as well, intentionally pursued some young Christians, new Christians, and catching that new zeal. And it was just absolutely delightful to see them just as kind of team members, if you like, Christian team members, just learning how to reframe their answers in light of there being non-Christians there. So you could see that was exercising them in a really helpful way. Doing the course was also cementing them in their own newfound faith, as well as exercising them in their ability to share the faith with others. And then we've looked at also people who would lead, as Tim said, there were the breakout rooms. So, after an early stage, there are other people who might lead a breakout room, but between those two, somebody who might assist, a leader in a breakout room. And then ultimately, one would hope that people would learn to do like Tim does and lead the whole thing. So from just coming in as a team member with no sense of responsibility other than to be a Christian there and answer and encourage, through to sort of assisting a breakout team leader, to being a breakout team leader, and then ultimately to be able to run one oneself. That is a whole movement of discipleship training.
So you could have had a member from Christchurch, Liverpool, who was bringing a friend, and that was one area in which people could serve. But quite distinct from that, you were saying to other Christians, come along, but be on the team, be eyes and ears, watch and learn. And then you were also saying to others who maybe had done that the last time, now it's your turn to step up a little bit. We're going to put you in charge of a group. We'll hold your hand. We'll help you with that. And then you had Tim overseeing the whole thing, and obviously just moving people up. That's so helpful to
Absolutely.
hear.
And the Christians who brought non-Christians were totally independent of that kind of movement. So we had one person who brought a non-Christian friend, but the non-Christian friend, stopped coming, so they stopped coming.
Right. Yes.
It wasn't a presumption of commitment. They just came because they're non-Christian.
For that purpose. Brilliant. Very helpful. Tim, jumping back to you, what was it like? That's a fairly big CE course you had then at the beginning of, or at the end of March, beginning of April sort of thing, when lockdown was really just stunning us all, and it was like nothing we'd really ever seen in our lifetime. Was it about 30 you had on that, did you say?
Yeah, we topped out at 30.
Amazing. And what was the vibe on that course then?
It was great. Yeah, it was really good. I think Lindsay's mentioned those younger Christians that we got involved. To see them grow a little bit in their confidence, but their excitement for sharing the gospel and their excitement for seeing unbelievers engage with the gospel was quite distinctive. That was a real encouragement for us. I know it was for them, because you could see it and you could hear it. So that was really great. I think we've probably got some more to learn how we can encourage that beyond the course, but that's another story. So that was really positive. But also, certainly for that course, those unbelievers that came along, their willingness to engage and in a very open way answer the questions and be honest about their answers was really quite refreshing. It's not often that I've had conversations with unbelievers where they're going to be as honest and open as they were during that course. Whether that was the the structure of the questions or the way the meeting was geared with younger Christians and other Christians as well, so much more experience, perhaps openly discussing and giving answers themselves, that gave them that freedom to say, actually, this is a safe place to have this kind of conversation. I think that was probably part of it, but it was certainly a very encouraging time. Yeah. And as I'm not sure, well, Lindsay mentioned about people following on and getting more involved in Bible studies. We've not seen that from this particular Christianity Explored. We've seen that from Discipleship Explored. Yeah. But because we had Christians bringing friends and engaging with them, those conversations were able to continue outside of the meetings as well. And I trust they're still continuing with one or two even now.
How do you recruit prayer from the whole church family? I mean, is there anything in particular you do there? Maybe back to Lindsay on that one.
Yeah, well, first of all, every month we have a prayer and praise evening on a Sunday evening once a month. Yeah. And, so it's always mentioned, in there. We also have a members email that goes out fortnightly, so people will be aware about things happening there. So, in various different settings,
Sure. Brilliant to hear that. I'm sure there's another 50 things I wish I'd ask you later, but we better get to the wonderful Life Explored. And you've had experience of this, running it in physical groups, offline, we might say, as well as running it online. And we're thinking particularly about our friends in Eastern Europe, in the Czech Republic and Hungary and Ukraine, who are just getting started with Life Explored now, probably going to be doing that online. I'll come back to you, Lindsay, in a moment, but Tim, just in terms of your experience of it, it's obviously technically probably the same as Christianity Explored or DE, but just in terms of anything you would say to them to encourage them in terms of how you encountered it and what you felt it did for us.
Yeah, well, first thing to say, it's very doable. Don't be fearful of running it online. It's very straightforward. And if you're not familiar with the Zoom, just spend half an hour getting familiar with it. Practice between each other so you're ready to go live. Don't go live for the first time without having used Zoom, because that's not helpful. Yeah. But I'm sure most people are quite familiar with Zoom now. So, but it is eminently doable. In terms of some helpful thoughts, I think some of it will depend on the size of the group, how many people you've got coming into the meeting. And how you can facilitate the running of the meeting. So if you have enough people to need to use breakout rooms, then having at least one person who's familiar with the material to facilitate and to help guide that breakout room is really important. So ideally you want people on the team that can take that lead when you do break out. And encourage participants to share and be prepared to take the lead in sharing first if no one else is. So you kind of need to set the tone and make it a safe space to people to contribute. One thing that we found really helpful after we finished the breakout rooms for the second time round is to have some feedback from the room leaders as well. Yeah. Not to share so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that, but to say, actually, the feeling from our group around this kind of question was this. And one of the key things that we discussed and we found helpful was this. And to share that with the wider group. And we found that was immensely helpful. And it also gave the group that little bit extra sense of being in this together and not just being in their own little rooms.
Brilliant. How did you find people reacted to the first film, the narrative film? I mean, what was the input like to discussing the film and the key question for the evening? Yeah,
so Life Explored obviously has those two films, doesn't it? It has the sort of introductory film and the main film. The introductory film, we tend to find that just helps set the tone for the evening. And it just marks the beginning of our time together. And then it really comes into its own after you've watched the second video. Yes. And you can see how the links join up together a little bit more. But the videos themselves, they certainly help people's thinking and get their mindset into the topic and the questions that are coming along. So yes, they're immensely helpful. It would be difficult to run it without the videos, that's for sure.
Yes.
With the questions that are there.
Good. And we've sometimes found that our non-Christian friends who come along have got no issue with the film. They totally get it. Whereas the Christians, the church family, are trying to find a meaning. Did you encounter a little bit of that?
I absolutely agree with that. As Christians, we're coming into this. We've come from a position of knowledge about the gospel and what we think we need to convey in terms of that gospel message. And mostly we're right, but actually we are overthinking where these other folk are coming from. And we're overthinking, why is the video presenting in this way and why is it not saying that? I think we just need to recognize that we are not the guests who are coming. That's right. without all that background information that we have. We're trying to overlay on this video. So if we can, dare I say, get over ourselves a little bit, take a step back, then for the guests, the videos cause a few smiles with the guests, but that's great. It eases them into the fact that they can relax and take part in what's going on.
And I mean, that's so helpful to you say that, because these first films are designed not with the Christian public in mind, but with those who are not coming from a Christian worldview, and trying to draw them in a little bit. That's so helpful to hear you on that. So that's a word of encouragement to our friends from Tim, who's run this many times physically and digitally. Lindsay, what about you? You said something really helpful early on. Maybe restate that for us again, and any other comment you have on Life Explored.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of both Life Explored and Christianity Explored. So just the main thing to say is they come from different starting points. And, both of those are complementary to each other, both Christianity Explored and Life Explored. And when you come to Christianity Explored, it's very much in Mark's gospel. It's about Jesus, and we learn the basic gospel. Basic Christianity from Christianity Explored. And in Life Explored, it's very different. And it's really, I think it's designed to really meet people where they're at in their understanding of life. So the questions are, what would be the best gift God could ever give you? Yes. Well, anybody could sort of sit back, rub their hands and think of an answer to that. But also real issues that people address in their lives, Christian or non-Christian. It's like, well, what do you feel will give you fulfillment? Everybody wants to find fulfillment. What keeps you going in difficult situations? That's totally relevant to absolutely everybody, and everybody has to face those kind of situations and questions in their lives. And if only such and such was different, my life would be different. Yes. Everybody thinks like that. So it starts there, and it connects with where people are at. Yes. And addresses those questions, people's real, genuine questions, in light of what the Bible says about those things. Yeah. It really tries to connect with people with where they are at. So I think they're both great, and you could run one after the other. You could start with one the other. So I just do think, as I said, very helpful. Complementary in the contrast.
Your point about them being complementary is tremendous. I was very struck. So I was doing training with the Czech Republic on Sunday night there, and I was very struck again by how razor sharp the final set of questions are. I don't know if you found that, Tim, but when I was going through them again in preparation for Sunday night and looking at it, I thought these are fantastic Bible studies at the end, where you just get the gospel punched home with questions coming out of whichever text it is. So it's not an expository series in the way that CE is through Mark or DE is through Philippians, but it's attempting to expound the whole arc of biblical revelation. And I certainly found that the evangelistic thrust and clarity, is really escalated towards the end of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think with LE particularly, each module can stand on its own in many respects. And that gives you more freedom for people who've gone through the whole series to really to be absolutely crystal clear with the gospel call towards the end.
Marvelous.
Christianity Explored, you want to go on the whole, it's a journey as you go through. So I think there's a difference between the two in that respect as well.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Well, Lindsay, Tim, massive thanks to you for your encouraging word this afternoon, just for giving us an insight into what's happening at Christ Church Liverpool, and reaching out with this to churches all over the UK and around the world, encouraging one another to keep going with the gospel, to seize the opportunity in these days, and to speak well of the Lord Jesus and trust him that the power is in his word to change lives. Thank you both so much. And thank you to those who have watched our little chat this afternoon. The Lord continue to bless you. Thank you.